Hey folks, Wayne Jennings here. Today I'm going to be checking out a new little action camera. This is a WOLFANG GA400. It's a very rugged little camera. It'll shoot 4K, do time lapse, do slow motion, shoot still images up to 20 megapixels. But one of the neat features on this camera is it is waterproof. The WOLFANG GA400 is a waterproof action camera capable of recording video in resolutions of 720, 1080, 2.7K, and 4K. It will shoot still images in sizes from 5 up to 20 megapixels. This action camera ships with all the accessories you see here. In addition to the camera, which by itself is waterproof down to a depth of 8 meters, you get a waterproof housing, which will allow this camera to go as deep as 40 meters. There's a flexible lens cap to help protect the lens. You're supplied with 2 rechargeable lithium-ion batteries, rated at 1,350 milliamp hours, along with a USB cable for charging. There's a selection of straps, a metal lanyard, and zip ties for securing your camera, and a wide selection of adjustable mounting brackets, along with 2 quick release plates and extra adhesive tape. This camera comes with a 2-button remote control, and there is an instruction manual, a quick start guide, and a lens cleaning cloth. Now, before we get into all the technical stuff, here's a look at some of the video quality recorded by this camera. Now let's check out the camera itself. To me, it's got a good weight, a good heft to it. It feels like a very rugged little camera. Of course, the front is dominated by the wide-angle lens. On the bottom of the camera here, we have a metal 1/4-inch tripod socket. Beside that is the battery compartment door. To open it, you push this button and slide it. It's a bit stiff, but it's like that on purpose because inside you'll find this large rubberized gasket that's designed to keep the water out. There's a metal hinge on there, so it should be pretty durable. And of course, inside is our removable battery and our micro SD card slot. On this end of the camera, there's another little compartment. Again, you push that button and slide it, but behind there you will find your HDMI output jack and a USB jack for charging the battery. Above that is a small waterproof speaker. On top of the camera, we have 2 buttons, a mode button, which will allow you to switch between photo and video. And of course, we have our shutter release button. Between them, there's a small microphone. And on the far end of the camera here is our power button. If you just push that, hold it for a second, the camera comes to life. And we have a 2-inch touchscreen on this camera. Now, when I first turn it on, it defaults to video mode. You can easily change it to photo mode just by swiping from the side. Now it's in photo mode. You can do that from either side. And in this case, we're in the video mode. And to make changes, you just hit this gear icon down here, and it opens up a menu, a very extensive menu. Obviously, we have video resolution. You can go in and change it from 720, 1080, 2.7, all the way up to 4K. And there's a whole bunch of other things you can change on here. You can turn the voice recording on or off. There's an exposure compensation, electronic image stabilizer. You can do loop recording. You can do time-lapse recording. You can do slow motion and fast motion. There's a wind noise reduction. And if you hit this button, there's like a sub-menu where you can change things like the power frequency, turn the sound on or off, adjust the white balance. There's special effects. There's a distortion calibration. There's a diving mode for taking the camera underwater. You can set the date and the time. There's a screensaver, auto power off, and of course you can format the card, change the language. So it's quite an extensive menu for this little camera. And in the photo mode, very similar. The main differences here being you can set the photo resolution, in this case from a low of 5 up to 20 megapixels. You can change the ISO and then different things specifically for photos like burst photo, self-timer, long exposure, and you can change the metering pattern as well. You can also play back photos and videos. If you hit this little button down here, it takes a few seconds, but it will load all the images from the memory card and display them, find the one you want, and just hit it, and it will play the video back. So it's a great way to, after you've shot your scene, you can check it out, make sure everything's exposed and looking okay. So all in all, a lot of features on this little camera, very extensive menu, and very easy to use as well. This camera performed very nicely when recording time-lapse sequences. You can set the recording interval at 1, 3, 5, 10, 30, or 60 seconds. Still photos can be captured in sizes of 5, 8, 10, 14, 16, or 20 megapixels. You can also shoot self-timer shots, burst photos, and you can take long exposures. This Wolfang camera also features a loop recording function, which means it'll record a video for 1 minute, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes, and it'll just keep repeating that and recording that loop over and over, which means you can use this as a dash cam in your car. All you have to do is hook it up. If you have one of these suction mounts, or if you have one of these sort of flat mounts, you can stick it on top of the dashboard. The other neat thing is you don't have to worry about the battery running out, because you can run this camera using a USB cable as long as you plug the other end in. A lot of new cars have USB jacks, or you can plug this into a power bank, and you can run this camera all day long as a dash cam. Although this is an automatic camera, you can override some of the settings. For instance, white balance can be left on automatic or set to daylight, shade, tungsten, fluorescent, or underwater. The ISO can be left on automatic or set to 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600, or as high as 3200 ISO. There are 3 light meter settings: center, multi, or spot. And a nice feature I always like to see is an EV setting. On this camera, you can raise or lower the exposure by 2 stops in 1-stop increments. This camera has a feature called EIS, that's electronic image stabilization. That's turned off right now. I'm just walking down this forest trail to show you what kind of shot you get without the EIS. I'll just turn the cam around. There's the same shot walking forward down this trail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, turn the EIS on, and then you can compare the 2 shots. All right, so I've come back and I've turned the EIS on. So now this is that same shot with the stabilization turned on. I'll just turn the camera around, and there's that same shot walking forward with the image stabilizer turned on, and back to me. So that just gives you an idea how it helps smooth out these handheld shots using the EIS. This camera can easily be operated from a distance using the included remote control. Really simple, just 2 buttons on here. The white button, if you push that, a little red LED lights up and the camera begins recording video until you push it again. The red button here, if you push it, the red LED lights up and the camera will snap a still picture. In my tests, this combination worked at a distance up to about 40 feet away from the camera. But if you want more control of your camera, you'll want to download the app and use the Wi-Fi connection. Now you notice there's no image on the camera itself, it appears on my phone. And if I tilt my phone sideways, I get a nice big image of what the camera sees. Now, using the phone here, I can do a lot of things. If I hit the red button down here, I can shoot video. I can also shoot a still photo and record time lapse. If I push this button up here, I can go in and change the resolution. There's also a more extensive menu. If I hit this button up here, it opens up this menu that I can scroll through and make various changes, like adjusting the exposure, turning the image stabilizer on, changing the resolution, changing the white balance, things like that. Not quite as extensive as doing it on the camera, but still pretty good. You can also view images. If you hit this button down here, it opens up basically all your still images. If I hit video, it will pull up all the videos stored on the SD card and sends them to your phone. You can scroll through, find the video you want, and play it back. Here's a little audio test on the WOLFANG GA400. Now right now I'm using this device. This is a digital audio recorder with a plug-in microphone, just so you can hear what good audio sounds like. Because in a moment I'm going to stop this and then you hear my voice as the camera picks it up. Unfortunately, you'll find it records at a very low level. So let's just stop this. Okay, that stopped. So now what you're hearing is my voice as the camera picks it up. And I'm only at arm's length away, but I have to yell. I really have to raise my voice in order for that camera to pick up my sound. That's really unfortunate. There's a little teeny microphone in the top of the camera. You have to get close in order to be heard properly. So unfortunately, if you want to get good sound, you got to use something like this. This camera features an ultra wide angle lens, covers a field of view of 170 degrees. Unfortunately, it tends to give it a fisheye look. If you notice, the garage doors behind me, they're higher in the middle and they bow down on the ends. Well, that's that fisheye look. Now, there is a feature on this camera called distortion calibration, and when you turn it on, all that will level out. So let's turn it on and compare the two shots. All right, so this is actually the same shot from the same camera location, but I've turned the camera's distortion calibration setting on. And as you can see from the garage doors behind me, things are a lot more level and square. Gets rid of that fisheye effect. Now, here's a look at some of the slow motion. This first scene was at the 720 resolution at 120 frames per second. This next scene was also shot at the 720 resolution, but bumped up to 240 frames per second. Now, it definitely slows the motion down, but in my opinion, it's far too soft an image to even consider using in any of my productions. Here, we're shooting at 1080, this one at 60 frames per second. And again at 1080, but this time at 120 frames per second. And in my opinion, this is by far the best slow motion setting for this camera. In conclusion, I was very impressed with the video quality from this little camera. Whether it's 1080, 2.7K or 4K, all the video looked nice and sharp, at least when shot at 30 frames per second. I found if I boosted that to 60 frames, things started getting a little too soft for my eye. So my advice is stick with 30 frames and everything should look great. I'm really impressed with the fact that it's waterproof without a housing. I do a lot of canoeing, kayaking, fishing, and you know, when you're out there, if it gets splashed or if it starts raining, I know that the camera will keep on working. I was, however, a little disappointed with the audio quality. You got to get really, really close to this camera to get a half decent level. Otherwise, you'll be struggling in editing, trying to boost those audio levels. Another thing, though, on a positive note, is the batteries. This little camera has really good battery life. I mean, most of these action cameras, typically you get an hour to an hour and a half of runtime. But with this camera, I was consistently getting 2.5 hours, whether that's shooting 4K or time-lapse. I was getting great run times, really, really impressive. So other than, the audio issue, pretty much everything else with this camera is A1.